The massive space station called Nexus floated in the darkness around Kepler Prime. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its metal arms like insects gathering on a flower. Inside the station's biggest room, aliens from across the galaxy sat in a huge circle. The room was so large that voices echoed off the curved walls. Bright lights hung from the ceiling, casting strange shadows on the many different faces below. Commander Jake Morrison sat with his back straight in the human section. His dark blue uniform looked plain compared to the colorful robes and metal suits worn by the other delegates. Next to him sat Lisa Hayes, a woman with short brown hair who had spent years learning alien languages. On his other side was Captain Ben Carter, a soldier whose eyes never stopped moving as he watched the room for threats. The humans had been coming to these meetings for 15 years now. 15 years since Earth had built its first faster-than-light ship and found other life in the galaxy. 15 years of sitting in this same room, listening to the same arguments and being treated like children who had wandered into an adult conversation. Chancellor Veltar stood at the center of the circle. The Zephyrian leader looked like a walking crystal, his body made of clear blue stone that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow patterns. When he spoke, his voice rang like bells. The territorial dispute between the Andromedan Alliance and the Eastern Reach must be settled, he announced. We need buffer zones to keep the peace. Morrison leaned forward. He had an idea that might work. What if we set up neutral trading posts instead, he suggested. Both sides could benefit from commerce rather than fighting over empty space. The room went quiet for a moment. Then several aliens began making sounds that might have been laughter. Veltar's crystal face somehow managed to look annoyed. Commander Morrison, he said in a voice like ice cracking, perhaps you don't understand the complexity of the situation. Lisa Hayes stood up. We understand perfectly, she said. We're suggesting that trade creates stronger bonds than military occupation. Human history shows that economic partnerships last longer than forced territories. A creature that looked like a giant insect clicked its sharp mouthparts. Queen Zexara of the Hive spoke in a buzzing voice. Human history spans mere thousands of years. We have been managing galactic affairs for millions. Your species is still learning to walk among the stars. Morrison felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice calm. Age doesn't always mean wisdom. Sometimes fresh eyes see solutions that experience misses. More clicking sounds came from around the room. Ambassador Noreth, whose people looked almost human except for their silver skin and black eyes, shook his head sadly. The eagerness of youth, he said. Admirable but not practical for real problems. The debate continued for hours. Every time the humans offered an idea, it was dismissed. When they provided data to support their suggestions, the aliens found reasons why human information couldn't be trusted. When they pointed out successful examples from Earth's history, they were told that planetary politics didn't apply to galactic matters. Captain Carter whispered to Morrison during a break. They're not even listening to us. They made up their minds before we spoke. Morrison nodded. He had noticed the same thing. The other delegates had already decided what they wanted to do. These meetings weren't about finding solutions. They were about making the smaller species feel like they had a voice while the big powers did whatever they pleased. The third day brought the worst insult yet. Veltar stood again and announced the final decision. The buffer zones will be established, using existing colonies from newer member species. This will minimize disruption to established territories while providing the necessary neutral ground. Morrison's blood went cold. Which colonies? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Human settlements in the disputed sectors, Veltar replied without even looking at the human delegation. 7 worlds with a combined population of approximately 12 million. The colonists will be relocated to other suitable planets. Lisa Hayes shot to her feet. Those people have spent decades building their homes. They have farms, families, entire communities. You can't just move them like game pieces. Queen Zexara made more clicking sounds. The needs of the many outweigh the concerns of the few. Your colonies are small and easily relocated. This solution causes minimal disruption. Minimal disruption to whom? Morrison demanded. 12 million human lives don't matter to you? Veltar's crystal body flashed with angry light. Your colonies are not strategically significant in the broader galactic context. The established powers have investments worth trillions of credits and populations in the hundreds of billions. Simple mathematics shows the correct choice. Morrison stood slowly. Around the room, alien eyes watched him with expressions ranging from boredom to mild irritation. None showed any sign of caring about the human colonists who would lose everything. These beings had just decided to destroy the lives of 12 million people, and they acted like they were discussing the weather. I see, Morrison said quietly. His voice carried clearly in the huge room. Simple mathematics. He looked at Lisa and Ben, then back at the assembled delegates. 15 years of trying to be good galactic citizens. 15 years of following rules made by others, of accepting decisions that hurt humanity while helping aliens, of being treated like junior partners who should be grateful for any scraps thrown their way. The United Earth Federation hereby withdraws from all Galactic Council proceedings, effective immediately, Morrison announced. The words felt strange in his mouth, but also liberating. We will honor existing trade agreements for 6 months to allow for transition. After that, humanity will determine its own path forward. The silence that followed was complete. Even the background hum of the station's air recyclers seemed to pause. Then Veltar spoke, his voice filled with what might have been relief. Perhaps that would be for the best. The Council requires members who understand the responsibilities of galactic citizenship. Morrison gathered his papers with steady hands. Lisa and Ben followed his lead, packing their belongings while hundreds of alien eyes watched. No one tried to stop them. No one asked them to reconsider. A few delegates even looked pleased, as if an annoying child had finally left the room. As they walked toward the exit, Morrison heard Veltar speaking to his aide. The children have finally realized they don't belong at the adults' table, the Chancellor said. Perhaps now we can proceed with real business. The human delegation left Nexus Station without ceremony. Their ships detached from the docking arms and moved away into space. Behind them, the Council continued their meeting as if nothing had happened. They had their buffer zones. They had removed an irritating voice from their debates. Everything was proceeding exactly as they wanted. As Earth and its colonies received the news of withdrawal, mixed reactions spread across human space. Some people were angry about losing galactic protection. Others were worried about economic isolation. But many felt something different. Relief. Relief at no longer having to beg for respect they would never receive. Relief at no longer having to watch their people treated as expendable resources. In his quarters aboard the transport ship, Morrison stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 12 million humans were about to learn that the galaxy considered their lives mathematically insignificant. But those same stars held worlds that humanity had found and claimed without asking permission. Maybe it was time to remember that human beings had survived and thrived long before they knew aliens existed. The withdrawal was complete, but Morrison suspected this was just the beginning of something much larger. 6 months had passed since the human ships left Nexus Station. In the great halls where the Galactic Council met, business continued as usual. The aliens talked about trade routes and territory disputes without any mention of the missing human delegation. Most seemed to have forgotten that Earth's representatives had ever existed. Chancellor Veltar reviewed reports from across the galaxy while sitting in his crystal chamber. The documents showed steady progress on all major initiatives. Trade was flowing smoothly between member worlds. Military patrols kept the shipping lanes safe. The buffer zone plan was moving forward without any complications. The absence of human objections had made everything much easier. Status report on the former human territories? Veltar asked his aide, a smaller Zephyrian named Colvin. Peaceful. Transition in progress, Chancellor, Colvin replied. The colonists on New Dakota have 6 weeks to complete their relocation before our enforcement fleet arrives to claim the territory. Veltar nodded with satisfaction. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The humans had been a constant source of delays and complications. Their withdrawal had removed the last obstacle to efficient galactic governance. But in the space, around Earth, changes were happening that the Galactic Council couldn't see. Admiral Kate Phillips stood on the bridge of a ship that didn't appear on any official records. Around her, screens showed the locations of every human colony, every ship, every installation that existed beyond Earth's solar system. The scale of humanity's presence in space was much larger than the Council had ever realized. Phase 1 is ready for implementation, reported Commander Sam Mitchell, a young officer with sandy hair and serious eyes. All Outer Rim colonies have been prepared for transition. Phillips nodded. Begin the evacuation protocol. Make sure every family understands this is temporary. We'll bring them home when it's safe. Across dozens of star systems, human colonies received coded messages through hidden communication networks. Families packed their most important belongings into cargo containers. Children asked their parents why they had to leave their homes. The adults gave careful answers about temporary relocations and better opportunities elsewhere. But the humans weren't really leaving. They were going underground. Dr. Alex Warren had spent years studying alien technology in secret. While the Galactic Council restricted access to advanced research, claiming intellectual property protection, Warren had found ways to examine every piece of alien equipment that entered human space. He discovered something interesting. The aliens built their technology to work in space and on planets like their homeworlds. They never considered environments that most species found uninhabitable. The subterranean cities are complete, Warren reported to Phillips from his hidden laboratory. We can house the entire population of the outer colonies in underground facilities that won't show up on any alien scans. The thermal dampening fields will hide our heat signatures, and the quantum resonance scramblers will block their sensors. Phillips smiled. What about life support? Better than surface installations, Warren replied. We're using geothermal, energy, and closed-loop atmospheric systems. The colonies will actually be more comfortable underground than they were on the surface. Meanwhile, diplomat Ryan Foster was having very different conversations in parts of space the Galactic Council rarely visited. The galaxy was much larger than the Council controlled, filled with species that had never joined the Great Alliance of Worlds. Some of these aliens were primitive, still learning to build spacecraft. Others were advanced but preferred isolation. A few were actively hostile to the Council's expansion. The Kafari Collective is very interested in our agricultural proposals, Foster reported during a secure communication with President Maria Santos. Their worlds have been struggling with crop failures for decades. Our hydroponic technology could solve their food crisis. Santos reviewed the data from her office on Earth. What do they offer in return? Rare minerals that we need for advanced manufacturing, Foster replied, plus strategic locations for hidden bases. The Kafari systems are completely outside Council space. Similar negotiations were taking place with dozens of non-aligned species. Humanity was building a network of allies and trading partners that the Galactic Council knew nothing about. While the aliens celebrated removing human influence from their politics, humans were establishing relationships that bypassed Council authority entirely. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Council enforcement fleet arrived at New Dakota. Captain Rexdal of the Andromedan Navy expected to find a few stubborn colonists who needed encouragement to leave. Instead, his ships found empty buildings and abandoned streets. Population scan shows 0 life signs, reported his sensor operator. The colony appears to have been evacuated weeks ago. Rexdal frowned. Any indication where they went? Negative, sir. No ship signatures, no transportation records. It's like 12,000 people just vanished. The same pattern repeated across a dozen worlds. Every human colony that the Council planned to relocate was found completely empty. The buildings remained intact, but the people were gone. More puzzling, there were no signs of a mass evacuation. No ship exhaust trails, no departure records, no communications traffic that would indicate where the colonists had gone. Admiral Dexmore of the Zephyrian Fleet reported similar findings to Chancellor Veltar. We've checked 17 systems, sir. All human settlements are abandoned. Our sensors detect no trace of the missing populations. Veltar's crystal form flickered with confusion. 17 systems represent nearly 8 million humans. They cannot simply disappear without trace evidence. That's what makes this so puzzling, Chancellor. We find signs of normal daily life up until approximately 6 weeks ago. Then nothing. No distress signals, no evacuation orders, no indication of where they might have gone. The mystery deepened when Council ships began experiencing technical difficulties in former human territories. The problems always started the same way. Navigation. Systems would show slight errors, nothing major at first. Then communication arrays would develop static interference. Power levels would fluctuate for no apparent reason. Captain Yelton of the Rigelian Patrol found his ship dead in space while investigating the empty colony on Kepler 7. Every system shut down simultaneously, leaving his crew floating in darkness. Emergency power restored basic life support, but nothing else functioned. The problems lasted for exactly 6 hours, then everything returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Engineering report? Yelton demanded when his systems came back online. No damage detected, sir, his chief engineer replied. All components test within normal parameters. It's like someone just turned off our power for 6 hours, then turned it back on. Similar incidents occurred throughout former human space. Ships would lose power, weapons would malfunction, and sensors would fail without any detectable cause. The problems only affected vessels that entered systems where humans had once lived. Ships that stayed in neutral space experienced no difficulties. Back on Earth, Admiral Phillips watched reports of the technical failures with quiet satisfaction. "How are our new toys working?" she asked Dr. Warren. "Better than expected," Warren replied. "The quantum disruption field generators are completely undetectable when inactive. We can disable any ship that enters the target area without leaving any trace of what caused the malfunction." And the underground colonies? All populations successfully relocated. 200 million people are now living in facilities that don't officially exist. The thermal signature dampeners are working perfectly. As far as alien sensors can tell, those worlds are completely uninhabited. Phillips nodded. Phase 2 can begin. Start construction of the deep space facilities. Commander Mitchell looked up from his tactical display. "Admiral, we're detecting increased Council patrol activity near our borders. They're starting to ask questions about the missing colonists." "Let them ask," Phillips replied. "Questions are all they'll get. By the time they figure out what we're really doing, it will be too late to stop us." In the darkness between star systems, where no alien had ever thought to look, massive construction projects were beginning. Human engineering ships worked in complete silence, building installations that would dwarf anything the Galactic Council had ever imagined. The materials came from asteroid mining operations in uninhabited systems. The workers lived in rotating shifts aboard generation ships that never approached any planet. President Santos received regular reports on the progress. "How long until the infrastructure is complete?" she asked during a secure conference with her military leaders. 18 months for basic operations, Phillips replied. 3 years for full capability. After that, we'll be ready to reveal ourselves. And if the Council discovers us before then? Phillips smiled coldly. Then they'll learn why humanity survived long enough to reach the stars in the first place. We didn't become the dominant species on Earth by backing down from bigger predators, the bow. Galactic Council continued their regular meetings, making plans for territories they believed they controlled. They discussed human colonies that no longer existed and populations that had vanished into carefully prepared hiding places. The aliens congratulated themselves on removing a troublesome. 3 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. The galaxy had become a much more dangerous place. Without human colonies serving as neutral ground between major powers, conflicts that had simmered for decades erupted into open warfare. The Zephyrian hegemony and the Andromedan alliance were locked in a brutal campaign over mineral-rich star systems near the galactic core. Chancellor Veltar stood before an emergency session of the Council, his crystal form flickering with angry light. Behind him, holographic displays showed burning ships and devastated worlds. "The situation has become critical," he announced. "Trade routes are under constant attack. 3 minor species have been driven from their homeworlds. Pirate activity has increased by 400% in sectors that were previously secure. Ambassador Noreth of the Centaurians leaned forward in his seat. The humans bear responsibility for this chaos. Their selfish withdrawal from galactic duty has destabilized the entire outer rim. Queen Zexara clicked her agreement. Irresponsible. Children who abandoned their obligations when asked to make sacrifices for the greater good. The assembled delegates murmured their approval. It was easier to blame absent humans than to acknowledge that their own aggressive policies had created the current crisis. The buffer zone strategy had failed spectacularly, creating more conflicts instead of preventing them. But far from the council chambers, in the dark space of the Obsidian Nebula, something was about to change the galactic balance of power forever. Captain Nexom of the Rigelian Deep Space Patrol was investigating reports of strange energy readings in the nebula's outer edge. His ship, the Starfire, was equipped with the most advanced sensors in the Rigelian fleet. The nebula was supposedly empty, filled with dark matter and electromagnetic interference that made exploration difficult and colonization impossible. "Sensor contact," reported his tactical officer. "Unknown vessel bearing 27 Mark IV. Nexom studied the readings on his screen. The ship was definitely artificial, but its design didn't match anything in the Council database. The energy signature was particularly strange, showing power output levels that seemed impossible for a vessel of its apparent size. "Open communications," he ordered. A human face appeared on the view screen. The man was middle-aged with gray hair and calm blue eyes. He wore a uniform that Nexom didn't recognize, though it had a distinctly military appearance. "This is Captain Greg Anderson of the UES Horizon," the human said. "Can we assist you, Captain Nexom?" Nexom was surprised that the human knew his name, but he kept his voice professional. "I am conducting a routine patrol of this sector. What is your business in Council space?" Anderson smiled. "Checking that smile, Captain. This isn't Council space. The Obsidian Nebula has never been claimed by any galactic government. We're conducting scientific research on dark matter interactions. Your ship displays technology beyond what humans possessed 3 years ago," Nexom observed. "How do you explain this advancement?" "Necessity has been an excellent teacher," Anderson replied simply. "When you're forced to live in environments that others consider impossible, you develop new tools quickly." Before Nexom could ask more questions, the human ship began moving away. Its acceleration was smooth and silent, without the visible engine glow that characterized most spacecraft. Within moments, it had vanished into the nebula's dark matter clouds where sensors couldn't follow. Nexom spent hours scanning the area where the human ship had disappeared, but found nothing. It was as if the vessel had never existed. When he filed his report with Council headquarters, the response was immediate. All encounters with human vessels were to be reported directly to Chancellor Veltar. The meeting with the Horizon was just the beginning. Over the following months, similar encounters occurred throughout the galaxy. Human ships appeared in supposedly empty systems, conducted unknown operations, and vanished before Council forces could respond. These vessels demonstrated capabilities that shouldn't have been possible: faster than light travel without detectable hyperspace signatures, energy shields that absorbed weapons fire instead of deflecting it, and sensor-dampening technology that made them nearly invisible. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the Council's chief technology analyst, presented a disturbing report to the emergency session. The tall, thin woman with silver hair had spent decades studying alien technology for the Council. Her conclusions about human advancement were terrifying. Based on sensor data from 17 separate encounters, I estimate that humanity has advanced their technology by approximately 2 centuries in just 3 years, she told the assembled delegates. Their ships show evidence of gravity manipulation, temporal mechanics, and exotic matter utilization. These are theoretical fields that we believed would require millennia of research to implement. Chancellor Veltar's crystal form darkened. How is this possible? Human science was primitive compared to our established knowledge. Rodriguez shook her head. That was our assumption, but it may have been wrong. Human technology was different from ours, not necessarily inferior. They focused on adaptability and innovation while we perfected existing systems. Their 3 years of isolation appear to have been spent on revolutionary research rather than incremental improvements. The situation became critical when long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures from the direction of Tau Centauri, the largest human colony outside Earth's solar system. The system had been targeted for eventual annexation by both the Zephyrian hegemony and the Andromedan alliance. Both sides assumed the humans had abandoned it like their other colonies. Admiral Kexran of the combined Zephyrian-Andromedan fleet was confident as he led 300 ships toward Tau Centauri. Intelligence reports suggested the system was lightly defended, if defended at all. The massive fleet should be able to claim it without significant resistance. Approaching the outer system, reported his sensor operator. Energy readings are unusual, sir. Kexran studied the tactical display. Instead of the expected handful of human patrol ships, his sensors showed something impossible. The entire star system was surrounded by a network of defensive installations that hadn't existed in any previous intelligence reports. Where did those platforms come from, he demanded. Unknown, sir. They weren't there yesterday according to our long-range scans. It's like they materialized out of empty space. The defensive network was unlike anything in Council military databases. Massive energy barriers appeared between the fleet and the inner system, blocking their advance. When Kexran ordered his ships to fire on the barriers, their weapons were absorbed harmlessly. The energy seemed to make the barriers stronger instead of damaging them. Then the human defenses struck back. Weapons fire erupted from installations that were invisible until they opened fire. The technology was completely alien to galactic military doctrine. Instead of traditional energy beams or projectile weapons, the human defenses used focused gravitational fields that crushed ship hulls like paper bags. Other weapons seemed to disrupt the quantum structure of matter itself, causing enemy vessels to simply stop functioning. Retreat! All ships retreat, Kexran ordered as his fleet began falling apart around him. The combined Zephyrian-Andromedan force fled in complete disorder. Of the 300 ships that had approached Tau Centauri, less than 200 made it back to Allied space. The survivors reported weapons technology that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. But the most shocking discovery came from long-range sensors monitoring the battle. Tau Centauri's population hadn't been evacuated like the other human colonies. In fact, the system now housed over 200 million people, far more than it had contained 3 years earlier. Somehow, humanity had not only defended their major colony but had actually expanded it while remaining completely hidden from galactic observation. Chancellor Veltar convened an emergency meeting of the Inner Council, the galaxy's most powerful leaders. The crystal chamber was filled with tension as reports of human capabilities continued to arrive. "They're everywhere," reported Admiral Dexmore. "Our intelligence networks are detecting human presence in over 50 systems that were supposedly uninhabited. They've been building a hidden empire while we focused on our territorial disputes." Queen Zexara's mandibles clicked nervously. "How many humans are there now? Our last census showed fewer than 30 billion across all their known colonies." "Current estimates suggest over 300 billion, Rodriguez replied. "They've established massive population centers in systems we considered uninhabitable. Worlds with toxic atmospheres, extreme radiation, impossible gravity, environments where our species couldn't survive even with protective equipment." The implications were staggering. While the Galactic Council had spent 3 years congratulating themselves on removing human influence from their politics, humanity had quietly become the largest single population in the galaxy. They controlled more territory, commanded more advanced technology, and possessed military capabilities that could challenge the combined might of all Council forces. Ambassador Noreth spoke the question that everyone was thinking. What do they want? The answer came in a message that arrived during the meeting. It was transmitted on all Council frequencies simultaneously, impossible to. The failed assault on Tau Centauri sent shockwaves through every capital world in the galaxy. For the first time since the Galactic Council's formation, a major military operation had been completely defeated by forces that shouldn't have existed. Emergency sessions became daily events as reports of human activity multiplied across dozens of star systems. Chancellor Veltar paced the crystal chamber where the inner council met in secret. Around the room, holographic displays showed intelligence reports that painted an increasingly disturbing picture. Red markers indicated confirmed human presence, yellow showed suspected activity, and green marked systems where human technology had been detected. The galaxy map was rapidly changing from mostly blue council territory to a patchwork of colors that told a terrifying story. "The scope of their expansion is impossible," declared Admiral Dexmore, his crystalline form flickering with agitation. "Our reconnaissance teams report human installations in the Magellan Void, the dead zone near the galactic core, even in systems with binary pulsars that should fry any living thing that approaches them." Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a massive data screen, her silver hair catching the light as she gestured at impossible readings. The energy signatures we're detecting suggest industrial operations on a scale that exceeds the combined output of the entire Galactic Council. They're building something enormous out there, but our sensors can't penetrate whatever shielding technology they're using. Queen Zexara's clicking grew more agitated. "How is this possible? 3 years ago, humans struggled to establish colonies on garden worlds. Now they're thriving in environments that would kill our people in minutes." The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Marcus Webb sat in the center of the chamber, surrounded by guards and sensor equipment designed to detect deception. The human scientist had remained in council space after the withdrawal, continuing his research at the Galactic Institute. His testimony before the emergency tribunal was about to shatter every assumption the aliens had made about humanity. "You never understood what drives us," Webb said quietly. His voice was calm, but his eyes held a mixture of pride and sadness. "The council looked at human technology and saw primitive tools. You saw our colonies and thought we were limited to pleasant worlds like Earth. You were wrong about everything." Veltar leaned forward. "Explain." Webb stood slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "Humanity never accepted the limitations that other species took for granted. While you focused on perfecting existing technology, we asked different questions. Instead of, 'How can we make this work better?' we asked, 'What if we tried something completely different?'" "Specifically?" demanded Ambassador Norith. "Terraforming," Webb replied. "You settle naturally habitable worlds and adapt them slightly to your needs. We take hostile environments and transform them completely. The colonies you think we abandoned? We move them underground into artificial environments that are actually better than the surface installations we left behind." The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Dr. Rodriguez's hands flew over her control panel, bringing up new calculations. "If they can create habitable environments anywhere," she whispered, "then the number of potential colonies is unlimited," Webb finished. "Every asteroid, every dead world, every system you've written off as uninhabitable becomes potential living space for humans. While you've been fighting over a few thousand garden worlds, we've been colonizing the entire galaxy." The revelation became clearer as intelligence reports filtered in from across galactic space. The supposedly empty systems that humanity had evacuated 3 years ago were anything but abandoned. Long-range sensors were detecting massive underground cities, some housing populations in the millions. Entire civilizations existed beneath the surface of worlds the Council considered barren wastelands. But the worst news was yet to come. Captain Nicole Brown of the exploration vessel UES Pioneer made contact with a Council survey ship in neutral space. The conversation was recorded and later analyzed by every intelligence agency in the galaxy. Brown appeared relaxed and confident as she spoke with the alien captain. Her ship showed no visible weapons, but sensor readings indicated power levels that dwarfed most Council battleships. When asked about humanity's recent activities, she spoke casually about what she called the expansion phase. "Earth's population is approaching 500 billion now," she mentioned during the conversation. "Spread across several thousand worlds, of course. The homeworld couldn't support that many people even with our agricultural improvements." The alien captain's voice was strained. "Several thousand worlds? Our records show humans possessed fewer than 200 colonies before your withdrawal." Brown smiled. "You were looking in the wrong places. We've been very busy in the deep void, the radiation zones, the systems your people consider uninhabitable. Turns out there's a lot more real estate out there than most species realize. When pressed for details about human technology, Brown's answers became even more unsettling. She spoke casually of industrial complexes built inside dying stars, mining operations in the hearts of gas giants, and research stations positioned in the event horizons of black holes. These were environments where Council science said life was impossible. The key is not trying to survive in hostile environments, Brown explained. The key is transforming them into environments where humans can thrive. Once you master matter conversion and energy manipulation, the difference between a garden world and a ball of molten rock becomes largely academic. The conversation ended when Brown mentioned that her ship needed to return to the construction zones. When asked what was being constructed, she simply said that humanity was preparing for the next phase of galactic development. The panic in council chambers reached new heights when several minor species formally announced their intention to establish diplomatic relations with humanity directly. The insectoid Kafari Collective sent a message explaining that human agricultural technology had ended a famine that had plagued their worlds for centuries. The Aquatic Pelagic Union announced that human atmospheric processors had restored their dying homeworld's ecosystem. These species described aid programs that had been operating quietly for over 2 years. Humans were providing advanced technology, medical assistance, and environmental restoration services to dozens of non-aligned species. In return, they were gaining strategic partners and access to resources that the Council didn't even know existed. They're building their own alliance, realized Ambassador Vorith of the Rigelian Republic. While we've been focused on maintaining our existing power structure, humans have been creating an entirely new galactic order. The scope of human influence became clear when intelligence analysts mapped the network of species that had accepted human aid. The new alliance stretched across regions of space that the Council had never bothered to explore. Primitive species that the galaxy's major powers had ignored were now thriving under human guidance, providing resources and strategic positions that gave humanity unprecedented reach. Chancellor Veltar received the final shock when a personal message arrived through channels that shouldn't have existed. The communication bypassed every security system in the Council's network, appearing directly on his private screen without any trace of how it had been transmitted. The message was simple but devastating. Chancellor Veltar, the Galactic Council's authority is no longer recognized in territories beyond the Perseus Arm. Humanity extends an invitation to witness the new galactic reality. These coordinates mark a system where Council representatives may observe the scope of human achievement, come alone or with a full delegation. Your choice will determine whether this transition proceeds peacefully or becomes the first step toward a larger restructuring of galactic civilization. The coordinates that followed marked a location at the very edge of known space, in a region that no Council survey had ever explored. The message was signed simply, Admiral Kate Phillips, Human. Colonial Defense Force. Veltar stared at the message for long minutes. The humans weren't requesting recognition or asking for negotiations. They were informing the galaxy of accomplished facts. The species that the Council had dismissed as troublesome children had quietly become the dominant power in the galaxy. Emergency meetings filled the following days as Council leaders debated their response. Some argued for military action, despite the disaster at Tau Centauri. Others suggested attempting to negotiate from a position of strength. A few recommended simply ignoring the human claims and hoping they would eventually seek accommodation with existing galactic powers. But the reports kept coming in. Human ships were appearing throughout the galaxy, with technology that made Council vessels look primitive. Worlds that had been uninhabited for millions of years now showed signs of massive industrial development. The energy signatures detected from human space suggested capabilities that approached science fiction. Dr. Rodriguez presented her final analysis to the emergency session. Her conclusions were stark and undeniable. Humanity has achieved technological superiority in every field we can measure, she reported. Their industrial capacity exceeds our combined output by at least a factor of 10. Their population growth has outpaced. The journey to the coordinates provided by humanity became the most significant voyage in galactic history. Chancellor Veltar's diplomatic fleet consisted of 50 ships carrying representatives from every major species in the Council. The massive escort included the finest vessels from a dozen different fleets, their combined firepower capable of reducing entire worlds to ash. Yet as they traveled deeper into the galactic rim, every crew member felt increasingly small and vulnerable. The space around them was empty according to their sensors, but occasional energy readings suggested massive structures hidden beyond their detection range. Captain Yextal of the flagship reported strange gravitational anomalies that indicated artificial construction on an impossible scale. Ships that should have been alone in the void detected faint signals suggesting they were being watched by unseen observers. 3 hours until we reached the designated coordinates, reported the navigation officer. The bridge crew maintained professional calm, but tension filled the air like electricity before a storm. When they finally arrived at the target system, the sight that greeted them redefined their understanding of what was possible in galactic civilization. The system contained not one but 7 massive orbital constructs, each larger than the biggest space stations the Council had ever built. These installations surrounded a world that glowed with the lights of billions of inhabitants, more populated than most Council member homeworlds. Admiral Kate Phillips met the Council delegation personally, her command ship approaching with grace that defied its enormous size. The vessel was sleek and powerful, its hull made from materials that seemed to absorb and redirect light. When Phillips appeared on the communication screen, she looked exactly as professional and confident as her reputation suggested. "Welcome to Terra Nova Prime," Phillips said. Her voice was calm and measured, without any hint of triumph or hostility. "I'm honored to show you what humanity has accomplished during our period of independence." The tour that followed systematically dismantled every assumption the Council delegates had held about human capabilities. The orbital constructs were revealed to be industrial complexes producing starships at a rate that exceeded the combined output of every Council shipyard. The technology demonstrated mastery of fields that galactic science considered theoretical, at best. Dr. Warren, now bearing the title of Chief Science Advisor, personally guided the delegates through research facilities that seemed to operate by entirely different physical laws. Gravity flowed like water, directed by simple control systems. Time moved at different rates in different sections of the complex, allowing months of research to be completed in days. Materials that shouldn't exist according to Council physics were manufactured as casually as steel had once been produced. On Earth, how is this possible? Demanded Dr. Rodriguez, staring at a reactor that generated power by converting empty space into pure energy. Warren smiled patiently. "We stopped assuming that current understanding represented permanent limitations. Your species perfected existing technology. We asked what might be possible if we started over from basic principles." The delegates witnessed manufacturing processes that created matter from energy patterns stored in quantum databases. Ships were constructed not by assembling components, but by programming reality itself to form the desired structures. The techniques involved manipulating fundamental forces in ways that Council science declared impossible. During their stay at Terra Nova Prime, the delegates witnessed something that shook them even more than the advanced technology. A human exploration fleet returned from beyond the galactic rim, their ships carrying reports from successful colonies in the nearby Magellanic Clouds. Captain Janet Turner, the fleet commander, spoke casually about establishing contact with 3 other galactic civilizations and negotiating trade agreements that would dwarf anything the Council had achieved. "The Andromeda Galaxy has been very welcoming," Turner mentioned during dinner with the alien delegates. "Their technology is different from ours, but we've found common ground. The exchange of knowledge has been beneficial for everyone involved." "Ambassador," North nearly choked on his food. "You've made contact with other galaxies?" "Several," Turner replied matter-of-factly. "Once you master intergalactic travel, the universe becomes much smaller than most people realize. We're currently planning expeditions to galaxies that your long-range sensors haven't even detected yet." The implications were staggering. While the Galactic Council struggled to maintain order within their own spiral arm, humanity was casually discussing trade relationships with civilizations millions of light-years away. The scope of human achievement had transcended anything the galaxy's established powers had imagined. President Santos arrived on the third day of the visit, her transport a massive city ship that served as humanity's mobile capital. The vessel was larger than most asteroids, its interior containing parks, cities, and industrial complexes that housed tens of millions of people. Santos herself was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that held the weight of unprecedented responsibility. "I want to be completely clear about humanity's position," Santos told the assembled delegates during their formal meeting. "We have no interest in conquest or domination. We simply refuse to accept limitations imposed by others' lack of imagination." She gestured to displays showing the scope of human expansion. "In 3 years, we've established sustainable colonies in over 10,000 star systems. Our population now exceeds 800 billion people. We've developed technology that allows us to thrive in environments that other species consider uninhabitable. We've made contact with civilizations beyond this galaxy and established trade relationships that span millions of light years." The numbers were impossible to argue with. Humanity had become the largest single population in the known universe, controlling more territory and resources than all council species combined. Their technological advancement had progressed beyond anything that existing science could explain. Chancellor Veltar made one final attempt to assert traditional galactic authority. His crystal form flickered with desperate energy as he stood before President Santos. "The Galactic Council has maintained order in this galaxy for millions of years," he declared. "Humanity must submit to established authority and return to their previous status as a member species under Council oversight." The silence that followed was profound. Santos looked at Veltar with something approaching pity. When she spoke, her voice was gentle but absolutely final. "Chancellor, the Council had its opportunity to treat humanity as an equal partner. You chose to see us as insignificant children who should be grateful for any recognition. We've simply proven you wrong." She stood and walked to a window overlooking Terra Nova Prime. The planet below glowed with the lights of 200 million inhabitants, while the orbital constructs stretched across space, like monuments to human determination. "We offer peaceful coexistence to any species willing to engage with us as equals," Santos continued. "We have no desire to rule over others or impose our will on unwilling populations. But we will never again accept subordinate status based on someone else's arbitrary judgment of our worth." The final revelation came when Santos presented the Council with humanity's terms for future galactic relations. The Galactic Council's authority would be restricted to the intergalactic sectors, roughly 40% of the galaxy. The rim territories, including all the space beyond the Perseus Arm, were now under human administration. Any species wishing to establish colonies or conduct research in these regions would need to request permission from human authorities. More significantly, humanity offered to share their advanced technology with individual species, but only through direct negotiations rather than council oversight. Several delegates immediately expressed interest in these arrangements, effectively fragmenting the council's unified authority. The journey back to Nexus Station took place in stunned silence. The council delegates had witnessed the collapse of everything their civilization represented. Species that had dominated the galaxy for millions of years were suddenly reduced to regional powers in a universe where humanity set the rules. When they arrived at the Great Space Station, they found that over half of their member species had already begun independent negotiations with human representatives. The age of council dominance was over, replaced by a new galactic order where the species once dismissed as troublesome children now controlled the majority of known space. Commander Jake Morrison, now serving as humanity's ambassador to remaining council territories, delivered the final message to what remained of the Galactic Council. He stood in the same chamber where he had announced humanity's withdrawal 3 years earlier, but everything had changed. "Humanity extends an offer of peaceful coexistence to all species willing to engage with us as equals," Morrison said, his voice carrying the authority of a civilization that had redefined what was possible. "We have no interest in revenge or punishment for past treatment. We simply require recognition of reality. The galaxy is large enough for everyone, but it will be organized according to principles of mutual respect rather than arbitrary hierarchy." As the human delegation departed, Nexus Station for the second time, the